was animals of all different sorts. These could be threats, but Iduna made a very, very pointed effort of sharing food with them, of doing different things to keep the animals as much as possible as you can with wild animals friendly to her. And if they could stay on the beach, well, they knew that their chances of being harmed were pretty much slim to none. There was a couple times which they had to run into the waters to escape an animal that wanted to attack them. But, for the most part, they started learning. They learned how to build defenses and find places to live that wouldn't put them in harm's way. They learned also how to keep clear lines of sight in case any predators wanted to attack. And most of all, they had a workable system. They were, despite Agnar's inadequacies, and probably because of Iduna's strengths, they were learning to adapt to the island. But this didn't mean that the relationship between two human beings was going to be easy. Though they loved each other, they had to blow up a terrible night about a year and a half into them being stranded. Agnarr finally cut loose, his temperament and his frustration coming to a head. He lashed out at Iduna, and even at Elsa, who wasn't there. If it wasn't for Elsa's problems and everything, I could have been at home. I could have just have sent you on the diplomatic mission and overseen the kingdom. But it's your side of the family. It has to be. My family has no magic. These words cut Iduna, and she was hurt. While she loved her husband and was incredibly reserved and thoughtful of a woman, it still hurt to be accused of this thing. Now, Iduna could, of course, have stood up to him and socked him in the face and really done that type of thing. But women of this age didn't necessarily proceed down that road. Oh, they would hold their men accountable, but they had a different tact. She knew that her husband was out of his mind with grief. So she had a plan. She went about collecting straw and thickets and any type of material, old trees that had fallen, little branches here and there. She started piecing them together using different types of sap and tape that she could find, anything that she could find. And I don't mean tape like duct tape, calm down over there. Anything that could be used to build a table. And she put together a table. And she kept working at it, and over time she even put together a couple makeshift chairs. As the days went on and her husband didn't speak, she continued working and put together a new little hut. She came up to her husband after a few days. Said, Agnarr, please put this on. Her husband, still scornful, knew that his wife would mean him no harm. As no matter how angry she was of him, she wouldn't actually hurt him, and he, no matter how angry he was with her, wouldn't hurt her. That night they went down, and Agnarr took off his blindfold. What he saw there amazed him. It was a long, as beautiful as it could be, table that was almost like the table back at the palace. Iduna said, I know that you miss home. I miss it too. I know that this isn't the world that you want to be in. But I wanted a little bit of the comforts for home for you. That night, the two of them, and if you have kids in the car, I will try to keep this as sensitive as possible. The two of them were close together. And it was a few weeks later in which all the telltale signs of that closeness became apparent. Iduna started showing. She started having nausea early in the morning. She was carrying a baby. That baby would come to term. And Agnarr could not have been happier. For that 9 months, through the whole period, even a little bit after, Agnarr and Iduna were happy. They were talking about how, with the child's help, they could possibly figure out how to build a boat, seaworthy. The three of them could figure out how to get off the island, or at least get themselves near a train post to be picked up. They didn't feel comfortable doing it just the two of them, but with a third person over time, when the child was old enough, they could get back to Arendelle, and the king could resume his post. They knew that as time was going on, that Elsa would probably assume control of the crown unless she had married somebody terrible. They were concerned about this. Elsa hadn't come to grips with her powers yet, and she might not have. They dreaded the potential that she had been discovered and that she couldn't control her powers and that Arendelle may be in ruins. But it was here in this moment of happiness that the baby was born into that they were taking one of their many walks. A jaguar came up. It had surprised Agnarr. Iduna pleaded with him not to try to get a branch or to do anything to attack or antagonize the jaguar. But it was too little. Iduna, fearing that her husband was to be mauled, saw him get attacked by the jaguar. She put the baby down. She picked up a branch and she whacked the jaguar on the back of the head. And then she had a piece of salmon that was with her that they were going to eat for snack, and she threw the snack towards the jaguar. The jaguar started eating it, leaving the husband alone. But the wounds were deep. He would survive, but he was pretty badly mauled. He was going to need to be tended to. Hey, where's the boy? Where's our baby? He thought innocently as he was trying to tend to his pain. The baby was missing. Agnarr, in grief, was looking for the baby anywhere that he could find it. Iduna, in grief, looked everywhere she could find the baby, but to no luck. This was a straw that snapped Agnar's fragile psyche. He lit into Iduna, and she, despondent with grief over the losing of her baby boy, reminded him that he wouldn't have been alive if it wasn't for her. And he said, well, I would have died 1,000 deaths. I would rather have died than have lost my boy. That night, the king and queen divorced. They had divorced with ceremony. There was no clerks to write this divorce. There was nothing official. They divorced in the worst way possible. It was two people devastated by all the sad things that had befallen them, who couldn't even bear to look at one another. It was at this point that Iduna went out to sea. And what I mean by she went out to sea was that she jumped into the waves. And she longed for the waves to take her to wherever it would. She didn't care if she drowned anymore. Her son was possibly dead. Her husband maimed and angry and petulant, striking out. She could hear Agnar's voice. Oh, you're going to try to die now, are you? And he picked up that music box that she didn't even know he had kept. He said, well, take this with you. And she threw it. And it is here that we are going to stop this story and pick it up. We're going to have to do a two-parter on this. Is Iduna going to drown at sea? What would happen to Agnarr? And what happened to their baby boy? What about Elsa and Anna? What about them? No search parties? We're going to pick that up in episode 2B, which will be a continuation of Agnarr and Iduna, a story of trust.